Sensuality is an enriching experience that transcends mere physical touch. It invites us to explore openness and vulnerability, creating deeper connections with others. By engaging in mindful touch, we enhance our awareness of each other's desires and boundaries. This practice cultivates intimacy as it encourages honest communication and emotional safety. Each caress becomes a dialogue between bodies, transcending words and allowing us to connect on a profound level. Embracing the art of sensuality fosters trust, reigniting passion and curiosity in relationships. It's a journey of discovery, inviting us to celebrate the beauty of human connection through the transformative power of touch.
Hey everyone, welcome to Pleasure Principles, the podcast where we dive into the deeper dimensions of well-being, exploring what it truly means to thrive, mind, body, and the soul. I'm your host Avik, and today we have an incredibly important conversation that is lined up for you all. Our guest today is the brilliant Phyllis E Leavitt. So welcome to the show, Phyllis.
Well, thank you so much for that great introduction. And thank you for having me.
Lovely, lovely. So, but before we start our conversation, I'd quickly love to introduce you to all of our listeners. So, dear listeners, Phyllis is a psychotherapist with over 3 decades of experience and the author of America in Therapy, a new approach to hope and healing for a nation in crisis. So, Phyllis believes that our collective mental health is in urgent need of attention. So much so that she's calling for a nationwide therapy session to help us overcome the societal dysfunction that's affecting all of us. So we will explore how principles of psychotherapy can offer answers to the anger, division, and crisis we are facing today. So both as individuals and as society. So buckle up, because this is one conversation that you won't want to miss. So welcome to the show again, Phyllis.
Thank you so much. And thank you for having me here with you.
Lovely, lovely. So Phyllis, what inspired you to look at America's challenges through the lens of therapy?
Yeah, so many things. But one way of saying it is that in the world of psychotherapy and psychology, we really understand that healing and our mental health and our well-being, our emotional mental well-being, and our most constructive behaviors are most likely to be fed by constructive, healthy, peaceful, respectful human relations. And it's the harm that has been done to us by other people that actually causes our dysfunction and our acting out and our depression or addiction or anxiety or isolation. It's the ways that we've been hurt by other people that haven't had a chance to heal that cause our greatest pain. And so when I looked at the family of America through that lens, how are we addressing the way we treat each other? Are we fostering healthy human relations? Are we looking at the well-being of everyone as a goal? Or are we just invested in winning an election or winning, a vote or winning, that our policy gets passed, and without regard to the impact that it has on everyone? Are people being hurt by what we do? And if so, why are we allowing that?
Exactly. That's very true. Yeah. And in your book, you describe the nation as if it were a therapy client. So what would you say America's biggest unhealed wounds are?
Basically, the unhealed wounds in a family, in an individual family, are the same unhealed wounds that we have as a nation, where one person overpowers another without regard for whether they're hurting them or not, where one person takes from another without consent, without regard for the impact, again, on who they're taking from. in a healthy family, let me put it this way, in a healthy family, and again, none of us is perfect and we all make mistakes and have to repair our relationships at times, but in a relatively healthy family, people listen to each other. Everybody has a voice. There's respect. There's safe boundaries. There's a commitment to not acting out physically, sexually, verbally, or emotionally on each other. In other words, there's a commitment to nonviolence. And when we lose it and yell, or we do, something that is outside of those boundaries, we really look to repairing that and making amends and doing better in the future. In a healthy family, there's good boundaries. I don't just take from you. I know where I end and you begin, and we help our children understand good boundaries so that they don't believe that they're just the center of the universe and entitled to whatever they want, or that they're not the center of the universe and they're not entitled to anything. So these are some of the qualities of a healthy family. Another one is that we tolerate our differences and we can even celebrate our differences, that one child might be great at math and another is artistic and another just loves animals, and we have different aspirations and different natures, and that we love and respect and honor all those differences rather than trying to force someone to be like us. And as I say those qualities of a healthy family, I think we can see that in the family of America, many of these qualities of a healthy family are not part of our policy. They're not part of our practice, and they're not even talked about in terms of agenda of what we should make priorities in our country today. In fact, I don't think we talk about how we treat others. I think we talk about what we want and how we're going to get it, and who's right and who's wrong.
Exactly, yeah. So some might think that therapy is only for the individuals. So how does it translate to healing on a national level?
Yeah. Well, I really focus in my book in talking about what that would look like on a national level. And some of the things are just the practices of conflict resolution. Because in our country, I don't think that we even look at as a goal resolving conflict. We're still in a win-lose paradigm. Who's going to win and who's just going to lose, and who's going to get their way and who's not, rather than a win-win paradigm, which is what a healthy family would embrace, where everybody wins. Everybody gets some of what they want. Everybody gets heard. Everybody is safe. Everybody gets their needs met as much as humanly possible, and obviously we don't get them all met. So I think and the bottom line for all that kind of conflict resolution is people sitting down and really deeply listening to one another with an open mind, with respect, with restraining their most reactive impulses, and taking responsibility for themselves. How can I make this better? Rather than pointing the finger and blaming you. And in the best therapy, this is what we teach people to do. And this is what works. When people get off the blame and I'm right and you're wrong, and they start listening deeply and developing empathy and compassion and having a more open mind to the validity of the other person, with a desire to work it out, then you have relationships that become healthier and more fulfilling and more peaceful and more loving. And those same principles of personal responsibility and restraint from our most aggressive impulses when we're upset, and making amends when we need to, and really setting the agenda for the goal to be that we reconnect and we work together, those principles can be brought to a nation. And I think we can see that that's not what's playing out now. And it's costing everybody, I think, their mental health in this country, because there's a lot of stress going on with the lead up to the election, the aftermath of the election. What do we do now? How do we come together? Will we come together? Is that even part of the plan? Is that what people want? When we know in our individual lives that of course we want that. We want that with our families. We want that with our friends. We want to feel safely a part of our communities. We want to feel safe and respected in our workplaces, in our houses of worship. So the same things that we want for our mental health in our own lives, I see that there's no reason why that couldn't be translated to a national agenda if we were educated enough to realize the benefit of doing that for all of us and the high cost of not doing that, which is escalating violence and divisiveness and hatred and discrimination and widening gap between the wealthy and the poor.
Yeah, exactly. True. So, like many people view that mental health as a personal responsibility, not a collective one. So, uh, how do you convince people that we need to address this as a society?
Well, I think part of it is talking about the high cost of not addressing it as a society. And that's why in my book, I look through the lens of family systems, because I call America the family of America, because it operates on family dynamics just like we do in our own homes. How is power handled in our own homes? Do the adults in our homes, who do have more power than the children, do they exercise that in a way that's good for everyone? Do they listen to their children? Do they have a place at the table? Or do they restrain themselves when they're angry? Is there a place for everybody to have their needs considered and valued and met? So I think we have to educate people about the dynamics of abuse, because when abuse happens in a family, none of the things that I'm talking about are happening. People don't feel loved. They don't feel safe. They don't feel like their differences are tolerated. They don't feel like they have a voice. Often they feel like they're punished for disagreeing or speaking up or trying to get help. And in an abusive family, people are then blamed for their symptoms. They're hurt. They're either physically violated, they're emotionally abused, they're ostracized, they're sexually assaulted. Whatever happens in an abusive family, people become symptomatic, and an abuser will then blame their victims for their symptoms. Why are you crying? Stop crying, I'll hit you more. Or the child is so terrorized at home that they're failing in school, and then they're punished for failing in school. And we do that as a society. We withhold resources, we withhold opportunity, we have discrimination, we have discriminatory policies and practices, and many, many people are suffering and become highly symptomatic, whether they're depressed and not functioning well, not parenting well, not partnering well, not succeeding at work, or acting out on themselves or others. And then we tend to blame them rather than saying, what happened to these people that they're not functioning well in their own lives, in their families, and in our communities? And we really see this with the escalation in mass murders. We need to be asking as a society, what is happening in the family of America that is producing more and more people who are so enraged and so disconnected that they want to go out and kill people they don't even know? So these are large family issues, and I don't think that that's necessarily been identified as that. We tend to just blame our victims socially as well as within families. And I'll say this is a big principle from the world of psychology that I don't think is commonly known. In a family, if one child is really acting out, hitting their siblings, failing in school, setting the house on fire, stealing, doing something or having outrageous fears and they can't sleep at night. If one child is highly symptomatic, what we now know in the field of psychology is that they're actually the symptom bearer for the family's dysfunction. They're calling for help for the family. Something's not working in their family life, generally in their family of origin, but it could be in their school or their immediate environment. But something's really not working that's hurting them or scaring them. And they're becoming symptomatic as a way to get help for the family. They don't know that, but that's what they're doing. Just like if we eat really bad food, some part of our body is going to become symptomatic, and it's calling us to get help for the health of the whole body. And so our most symptomatic members of our society, not just our individual families, are doing the same thing. They're calling for help for what's not working in the family of America. And we're not listening to them that way. And I think partly it's just because people don't know to listen to to our most symptomatic societal members that way. And if we did begin to look at them that way, then we would look at the causes of their pain and their dysfunction instead of just blaming them as bad or evil or sinners or just intrinsically wrong and just wanting to lock them up.
Lovely. That's really lovely. And so listeners may feel skeptical, like I'm thinking that I can't change the society. So what do you say to those who feel powerless to impact such a large scale change?
I think that's a really good question. And I think a lot of people have that question. I think a lot of us come up against feelings of powerlessness. I'm just one person. The forces of politics and the media are so strong. How could I ever make a difference? And the two things I want to say, I don't know, what's really possible. I don't know. But because none of us really know, but we know what we're dealing with more or less. And the two things that I would say are this. Number one, in an abusive system, whether it's in a home or a community or a business or a government, those in power who are wielding power in a harmful way toward other human beings want you to feel powerless. They don't want you to resist. They don't want you to find a way out. They don't want you to call out abuse and neglect and bring it to other people's attention or get help. So it's part of an abusive family system that more and more people actually feel that kind of powerlessness because they've been so overpowered and perhaps have not yet found a way to help themselves or get rescued. So I think we have to know that that's part of the dynamic of a dysfunctional family system on any scale, that those who want to hold on to power and don't care what their impact is on others want you to feel that powerlessness and do nothing to resist. So that's one side of it. The other side is that I think we really have to help each other understand that we can all make a difference. I can make a difference in the lives of the people around me. The people around me definitely can make a difference in my life. So if it's just as simple as being kind to your neighbor, going out of your way to help someone who's in distress, giving your seat up on a bus to somebody who's elderly and having a hard time standing, or, it can be on any level of kindness, of respect, of tolerance, of diversity, of sharing and caring and compassion, actually has a ripple effect that we may not even know. We may not know that the person we were kind to in the restaurant was going to go home and scream at their kids, but our moment of being caring and sharing changed their mood and they went home in a better place. So it can be like that. It's also that many, many people have a contribution to make, whether it's like you doing a podcast where you make room for many, many voices and you hope to have a healing influence on the world through your voice and through inviting people to share on a large scale, or somebody writes an article to the editor, or they run for office and they hope to promote better values and a more humane approach to politics, or I write a book, or I play beautiful music that warms people's hearts. We all have a contribution to make. And one of the things that I learned so powerfully as a therapist, because many people come to therapy because they feel powerless in a certain part of their life, powerless to maybe heal some of the relationships in their life, or to get along better with their partner or their children or their boss. And sometimes there's things we can't change. Maybe you have a boss who's just doesn't esteem you. So what I always say to people when they have some experience of powerlessness that feels overwhelming and they're tending toward feeling hopeless and resigned is that the true antidote to powerlessness is finding where you do have power and focusing your energy there. So I may not be able to change the outcome of this election, which obviously I can't, and none of us can, but I can write my book. And I can talk about the principles of healing, and I can share them with whoever wants to listen. I can be a more loving partner. I can be a more understanding parent or grandparent. I can be kinder to the person in the grocery store who's upset with me or whatever, So I think we just have to focus on what we each can do. And that's kind of the grassroots level of bringing about change, which is very, very necessary, because I think a lot of people feel resigned and powerless right now, and they don't know what to do.
Got it. So, okay. Now, the thing is, what are some of the first steps that we as individuals can take today to start healing both ourselves and contribute to a healthier society?
Yeah, I mean, there's so many things that we can do, but I just want to focus on something that kind of dovetails with what I just said about power and powerlessness.
Mhm.
Because I think one of the things that we're really suffering from in America, and I think around the world, it's not just America, maybe as a human race, what we're suffering from is this model that we've been operating on perhaps forever, which is a power over model. I have to beat you. I have to beat you in the election. I have to beat you in this argument. I have to exert my power over you to make you do what I want you to do, or see life the way I see it, or believe in the religion that I believe in. It's very much a force kind of dynamic that we live in. Power over means one person or one group dominates, and one person or one group has to submit. And
Exactly.
does that make sense? And
Yeah.
that's what we're seeing playing out. And of course, it results in war, whether it's a war in your home between two people, or it's a war in your community between different populations, or different economic groups, or different religious groups, or different gender groups, or it's overt war between countries, or within a country of one group against another. And it will always go that way. The whole model of domination and submission, of power over, and a belief that might is right, is what is actually killing us. It's killing our relationships in our homes. It's destroying our relationships with our children, or making them dysfunctional and reactive. And it brings us to the point of war all over the world, which we're in. And it never resolves anything. There may be a truce at a certain point because people give up, or they're conquered, or they're beaten into submission. And there may be a period of peace for a while after that, until the next war breaks out. And often, as we see historically and see around the world now, that many of those who have been so drastically overpowered and forced to submit later become the oppressors, because all that rage and all that feeling of not wanting to be the underdog erupts as identification with the aggressor, and they become like the people who hurt them. And we see this. And the tragedy is, for me, and I think for so many people, that it's mostly innocent civilians who suffer as a result, who have nothing to do with the conflict. They're such a huge part of the list of casualties. And I think we can't go on this way. And I think we have to educate ourselves that this is only going to produce more of itself. Abuse produces abuse. Violence produces violence. And one of the reasons why, and there's many reasons why, but one of the big reasons why is that abuse destroys the bonds of loving connection. When you're hurt by another person, you do not feel safe, loving connection with them, and they don't feel it with you. Otherwise, they wouldn't hurt you. And so that broken bond is the fertile ground for more abuse and violence to happen. Once we don't care about each other, then we don't care what we do to each other.
True. Exactly. Great. Great. So, thank you, Phyllis, for sharing your wisdom and insights with us today. It's just such an impactful thing, and your call to action is definitely clear, and your message is hopeful. So,
Yeah,
therapy
let me
is.
just maybe end on a message of hope, and that
Yeah.
is that we can all learn to learn how to resolve conflict peacefully and without aggression. We can all learn to listen more deeply to an opposing point of view. We can all learn how to commit to reconnecting with one another rather than winning the argument. And again, I just want to reiterate something I said earlier, because I do want to end on a positive note. Do what you can. And don't believe that it's meaningless, because every person's act of loving kindness and peaceful conflict resolution and consideration and tolerance of diversity matters in this world. And it hopefully will create a wave where that's actually what we legislate.
Wow, lovely, lovely. Great. So, thank you so much. And thanks for, dear listeners, thanks for tuning into Pleasure Principles. And until next time, take care of your mind, heart, and let's make a difference one connection at a time. So, thank you so much.
Thank you.